today is a Uperlite. Have you ever seen a Uperlite? They're from the Upper Peninsula in Michigan. We're talking about the Uperlite for you this come in. If you look at it, it looks like just like a little piece of like marble stone. When you shine light on it, you can see the selenite in it. It glows. It's not doing such a good job today. Sometimes my camera works better than others. But anyway, it's a cool crystal.
Nice.
And the idea is that we are finding the hidden light inside of each of us. We have to learn how to turn it on. Put it in the right light, put it in the right environment. And we have no one watching us so far, but that it takes about 2 minutes for people to come in to my shows.
I was going to say, I know it takes about a minute with StreamYard. There's like a delay.
Yeah, we've got, they're pouring in by my standards right now. Skywalking with Moon, hi.
Oh,
Jenny,
hi,
Jenny W., which I don't know who you are. Elaine Waters, I've seen your name. Gertrude, I think you're almost kind of a new name.
Hi, Gertrude.
Gertrude's one of yours, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What we're going to do, for those of you who have not been to Nine Candles before, and I just got finished talking to Dianne about it, this 9 candles in particular, when you light 9 candles, it's usually for prosperity or for something like that. But in the case of these 9 candles, I'm burning them because of the year 2022, which is the year of great change. Starting with the full moon, we light these candles to expand our visions, to give and receive heart-centered love for understanding and coming in the coming times of change. Guide our hearts and our awareness to the most beneficial path individually and collectively. And find the balance through this movement of frequencies, because that's what's happening around us. So we're going to light 9 candles. Except you don't light all 9. We're on day 8. Tomorrow will be day 9. Yes. And if you're lighting candles with me, remember I remind you every day, blow them out. Because if you don't blow them out, you won't have 9 candles for tomorrow. And what we do at the very end, though, is if you come in on the 9th day, we do let the candles burn down and let... I was taught as a child that when you light a candle in prayer, it's as if the time that the candle is burning, your prayer is going up into the atmosphere. So, and now we're going to make the candles go by, because I find them very disturbing when I'm trying to talk to people. And it goes to the waiting room. And I want to welcome Dianne from Dianne's Store. I'm so excited that she could make it.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And it's a Monday afternoon, right?
I know. What else were you going to do on a Monday afternoon?
Exactly, right? That's a great time for me to be here. Thank you.
And we were talking a little bit before we got here. If you've been through the candles before now, you know that I always kind of have No, they don't have to be red, but the reason I used red, somebody asked you, Dianne asked the same question. I use red candles because I'm kind of stealing it in part from a feng shui ceremony of red candles. Right. And other candles in feng shui have a great deal of meaning. Red candles mean prosperity, and I actually used to teach this trick to people when I taught tarot, and I used to help people try to get their lives rearranged. I'd have them do this 9 candles on their own at home and pray for certain intentions, to intensify the intentions. And it was amazing how many people got the things they wanted. It was kind of a precursor trial thing for me to do before I built crystal grids. And how to bring energy in for intentions. So.
Right. And like I was saying, when I lived in Cambodia, there is a healthy Chinese population there. Mm-hmm. And so when you go into the Chinese restaurants, the Chinese stores, they have red candles. Mm-hmm. So it's not unusual. And, the number 9, well, that's my number. And the funny part is I actually cannot escape the number 9. Mm-hmm. So whether I do it through my birth date, I'm a 9. Mm-hmm. When I did it with my married name before I was divorced, 16 years ago, mm-hmm. I came out to be a 9 in that. When I have just my singular, family mm-hmm. name, I'm still a 9. And so, for me, 9 is a very special number. it also correlates with the hermit card.
Mm-hmm.
And I always kind of joke and say, I'm a happy hermit. I like traveling by myself. I go places by myself. I like solitude. But, the hermit is also a teacher and someone that carries that lamp. And he can only see a little bit in front of him, but he is lighting the way for others. And so I think if you just kind of merge all these different ideologies from, ancient Chinese culture to the tarot, which is, 1500s Italy, to numerology, which is, gosh, I mean, that's ancient also. There's just so much synergy. And it just seems to make so much sense that it would all come together in this fashion.
Yeah, and it really gives you a point to culminate to. It gives you a goal to seek you. I had friends that were going to do 9 candles with me once just to see if it worked, and they'd always drift away on day 4 and 5. And I'd say just go back to the beginning and start, but you have to light. 9 needs to be in 9 human Earth cycles, a day. Okay. Which brings us to, if you have not been following what we've been talking about, the rabbit hole I've dragged everybody into this time, I started reading about ley lines and dragon lines and how the energetics of our planet are shifting rapidly. And when I talk about times of change, we rolled out in the scientists aren't exactly sure, it was 2016, 2017, we rolled out of a place in the galaxy where we had a plasma cloud that protected us from subatomic particles. And apparently now they've tracked it around. They could find it in the rocks that every 12,000 years we went to this place and our magnetic poles would shift. A whole lot of other stuff would happen, but they never knew why. Well, now we're alive, we're in it, and if you figure that those little subatomic particles can change rocks, our DNA's up for it, kids. I mean,
yes.
And it's happening. I mean, we're upgrading in lots of ways. Our energy's changing. Our ability to speak to the planet changes. This was foretold by Incans and Hopis and in the Vedic records, and a lot about this day, and that we are going to come to this great time of change, and we're going to go back into a much more collective mind. We've been in an individual mind, which some people might say is sort of an individualized hell, and we're going back into this other mind that's a collective mind where we can see and talk. And there's always those stories that humans had been telepathic at one time, and we're heading back into that. I don't expect to see the final culmination of the telepathy in this lifetime, but I can sense people changing. So what we're trying to do is look at that. And my reason for it, wanting Dianne, and I'm so grateful she came, she talks to people I don't talk to. She talks to entities I don't talk to. She talks to the raw. And I don't know I am so earth. I am so earth that, I don't, Ra's like, no, we're not going to talk to that woman. She's got too much to do on the earth. We're going to go elsewhere. So I asked Dianne if we could talk about, in her channeling, what she has found that might relate to this topic, and especially this time of change. Because it's coming from outer space, guys.
It is. And it's not, first of all, it's not distinct to us. And, if you read the Law of One, which, that's 5 texts by the Ra. And, the reason that I channeled the Ra to begin with is because when they were making those 5 texts, I was really little. I was about 4 or 5. And I was talking all about it. Now, I had no idea that there was these people channeling them. I had no idea, nor do I have New Age parents. My parents are more salt of the earth, those sort of New Englanders. But we know from the Law of One, and I can tell you from my channelings with the Ra, is that every planet goes through the same exact thing, and what's happening is not unique. However, it is very predictable. And so for the first 2 billion years that a planet is formed, it goes through first density. And some people confuse densities with dimensions, 2 different things. Density is levels of consciousness. And so that's like your plant life. This is even rocks, droplets of water. And so they spend 2 billion years with that level of consciousness. And it does indeed have consciousness. Plants do indeed have consciousness. We know that. That's why it feels good to take a walk in the woods. We
Mm-hmm.
feel those vibes. And like I was saying, scientists I just watched a video on this, made a device that you can clip onto a plant and hear it sing. I just watched them do it with mushrooms. So it's about 2 billion years of that. And then it goes to the next density, which is our animal life. And that's about 2 billion years too.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we go with happy humans.
Mm-hmm.
So as the consciousness comes, up, we spend 75,000 years as third density, which is human, which would correspond to your solar plexus chakra. The first density is your root, second is sacral, third is what the Ra would say is yellow ray or solar plexus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where our ego is, our self-esteem, our self-worth, and that feeling of separateness.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we get from that chakra. So it takes 75,000 years. Now, it's interesting that you're talking about 12,000 because there's 3 25,000-year cycles within
Mm-hmm.
the 75. Because you don't have to do the whole 75 if you get it right in the first 25.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of break it up. So it's kind of interesting because 12 is almost half of each of those cycles.
Right.
And so that makes perfect sense to me. And so, we're at the end. And so what the Ross said way back when is that in 2012, we would be approaching the end of the 75,000 year cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we could have gone fourth density up to our heart chakra, up to understanding that we're all one and living through love and compassion. And this is also where we start to become more telepathic.
Right.
But it would have been a very weak fourth density. And so they said, you know what? Let's see if anybody wants to come in and help. And so then you get all these wanderers that were coming in. Now, if you know Dolores Cannon and you read like the 3 waves of volunteers, you know that it started after the 2 bombings in World War II, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the biggest sin in the universe is blowing up a planet.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you start to get the ETs coming down, right? Because ETs, we didn't have an Area 51 and all that until we did that.
Right.
That's the one thing that they don't like because planets take billions of years to progress.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got even more. And this is why the children born from that time on seem so different. They're more evolved. They're more sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also not willing to put up with injustice and inequality.
Mm-hmm.
They have some memories of something better. They
Mm-hmm.
have some memories of where they came from, their home planet. And so now they're here and they're helping to raise the vibration of the planet itself. And literally, we're getting more light into the planet. Literally, we're becoming more enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
Even the photons are becoming more dense.
Mm-hmm.
We get that from the law of one. And so we're at the end of this cycle. And, people have this decision to make. Either I'm going to go to the negative polarity where I'm service to myself,
Mm-hmm.
or positive where I'm of service to others.
Mm-hmm.
And the Raws say the magic number is 51%. So
Mm-hmm.
you want at least 51% of the people to be of service to others. However, at the end of the 75,000 years, majority rules. But
Mm-hmm.
typically, it takes 95% to go negative. It's possible to have a negative planet. It's just not easy because it requires cooperation, and negative
Mm-hmm.
people are self-serving, and so
They're not going to get together on their own thing. Yeah.
Right. So it's rare, but it does happen. They even talk about some of the evil players, like on our planet, like Rasputin, they say, and Genghis Khan, how
Mm-hmm.
they did go to negative planets.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also heading in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I think too, we never get to see the good stuff on the media. We don't get to see it in the newspaper. We don't get to see it on TV. We don't get to see it on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
All we ever see is the bad, even though there's so many good people. I really feel like the media is skewed because it's more sensational and people tune in and it's about numbers.
Yeah. Well, I worked in the media. I worked in broadcasting. That's what my first degree was in. And it's absolutely true. They want what's sensational, but on the other hand, we also can't just say, oh, well, that's just how they are, because I've worked in things where we wanted to make a change. Look at how Obama changed how campaigns happened and got people back into the field of being interested in politics. That's what attracted me to him. He had the same thought I did. I was doing it on a teeny tiny little scale, and I got to be part of a national campaign that did that. And I think, if you, over the long haul, yeah, we remember the bad guys if you read From War to War in history. But my son had a world history book that went from civilizations changes that were positive to civilization change that was positive. And he has he's 30 years old, it's a much more optimistic view of the overall world. And he really has a compassion and an understanding. And I really think if we can help develop that within each and every one of us, then, and that's kind of where I'm going. I know you have book clubs, you have meditation groups, you have and you work with archangels, you work with all sorts of wonderful stuff. And I do a little bitty bit on my end, but I'm one of the things I want to encourage is I've asked people to suggest how do they think we can link each other together and become more of a community that is open to that stuff instead of, well, I've got my serenity, I'm going into the corner. I never understood that when I was around, people. And I know your group's not doing that. And you are out there doing fun things. You're going to Egypt and you're going to Mexico and you're seeing all that wonderful stuff. I get around that kind of energy and it overwhelms me. I couldn't even stand to be in, I went through the exhibits in New York, but when I was a kid, I used to go to the University of Chicago and they have a huge Egyptology thing there. And it used to I could only stay there 15 minutes and I had to get out.
Yeah, the energy is like...
Yeah, and I'm a dumb little kid. I don't know how to protect myself. But that's I'm glad that they're feeling that way, because ultimately what's happening is Gaia is going to speak for herself. The planet is going to have a chance to speak for herself. And, if she decides we go, man, we're just like fleas on a dog, man. We're done, And so we need to understand and learn that Gaia is a real being around us. And so it's just acknowledging all the living things, the trees, the animals, the water. And
the planet changes too. So the planet also goes from third density to fourth density. And that is what we're seeing. As we're purging, as we're getting away from toxic people and toxic situations, so is the planet. And so we're seeing volcanoes and tsunamis and wildfires and hurricanes. It's purging that negative third density energy. And so we're going to see more weather systems, but at the same time, I still say if you keep your vibration high, then it's not going to have such an impact on you, because chances are you can then be of service to others, to those who were impacted. And this gives opportunities to people that maybe wouldn't have ascended to fourth density, that now that maybe they can do a soup kitchen, maybe they can send aid, maybe they can do something that is of service to others. But there has to be these opportunities. But the planet is also purging, because planets go along with the people so say you end up in sixth density where the angels reside, we can't even see those planets, because those beings are light beings and the planet is a light planet.
Right.
And so everything becomes lighter and lighter and lighter. And so we're seeing the planet purging and becoming lighter and lighter. And so I suspect a lot more weather systems too.
Yeah, well, no, if that's going to happen, one of the things they're talking about is apparently the sun changes its north and south pole every 11 years, which seems like but I looked it up. I thought, is this guy crazy? I looked it up. It's true. And what they do is they watch the two poles come together, and they come together in a spot, and then on the other side of the sun, another pole comes, and then the pole that was like the north and south goes to the south pole, and the new pole goes to the north. We're in the middle of that. Our north pole it's on the west coast of Russia right now, and the south pole is completely left Antarctica, and it's in the Pacific, and they're moving up, and they figure they're going to hit somewhere near Jakarta. And if that's true, if you go straight through the planet, then the other pole will come up in Brazil.
Right. And, one of the things that they talk about in the Law of One is one of the reasons that it gets divided into 25,000 years is because we change enough on our axis that the North Star changes its location in our night sky.
Right.
So there is a lot of changes just constantly happening. But to me, I just look at it as something that's necessary. And I don't think it's something to be afraid of. I think it's something to embrace because we're heading in the right direction, I feel.
Right. Positive posts up. If you get a really snarky cartoon and you go, God, that's hilarious. For the last few months, I've been not posting things I thought were absolutely wonderful. They slam somebody. And, I think we can all pretty much admit that most of these people, they may have tried to hurt us, but most of them are really emotionally ill. And you don't kick people who are down.
No. And I do think we have to be careful on social media. One thing that I quickly learned just being a YouTuber, which I know is trivial, but, when I first started, people would say negative things. And one of the things they would always say is you're too happy. How can you be this happy? This isn't right. You smile you smile too much.
You have a great smile. Smile.
Well, I work with 6 density light beings all day. Before I got out of bed, I channeled them for 3 hours. Why shouldn't I be happy? But the other thing too I learned was, So I go into YouTube Studio and I go to the community settings and I can block out words. You can block out words. You can block out phrases. And so to me, it's that was a way of keeping my channel a higher vibration because you can only be so unkind on my channel because there's no need of it. Because I really do feel if you're taking the time to say things like that, then probably you're not well. But at the same time, it lowers the vibration of everything too. And so I just sort of got rid of it. And that's why you never see me with those videos where I'm crying and emotional, just people said this or that. You know what? You can just get rid of it. Just get rid of it.
Don't pay attention to it. All you're doing is feeding it. And that's why I know you read on politics, and I admire anyone who wants to go into that energy. But I don't read on politics because I think it just strengthens the creatures we're reading about. It makes them stronger. And I don't want to help do that at all. And I know that from campaigning, if you do that it happens. Another thing I did, Diane, is I asked the people in my audience, we only got 2 questions. One woman Nicole asked about blue, aqua, white, and quartz, and labradite are her favorite stones. She also likes rutilated quartz, and she wanted to know how any of them are attached to the to healing, and she's got a pretty good list of healing stones there. If you don't know what rutilated quartz is a quartz crystal that grew and is embedded in it fine little lines of other minerals. Sometimes it's gold, silver, sometimes it's hematite. It's something that has to be able to stand being in the quartz, but they make funny little lines, and they're considered much more powerful wands because they have that extra metallurgic boost in them. It's a very earthy human thing. So she's got some great stones there. Any stone that makes you feel more confident or that you feel happier with, everybody has sort of their personal vibrations of stones. If you want to know about a stone, Google it, because there's some really great texts, and for the most part, you'll get conflicting information from different groups, just like everything else. Sure. Just like pick a tarot card, right? But that's she's got a good list there. The labradite is a volcanic situation that all kinds of colors and stones get mixed together, and it's very interesting. Color-wise, it's very dark, and it's very rooting. It's very bringing you back into the earth. But the other question is something I think, because I already know Dianne and I have discussed her understanding of human crystals and human rocks, so I took that one. But you got a question from Helene. Guides have different names in each life. I don't know mine, but do they change, or is it the same one all the time? Do you get anything about earthly guides in your
Oh gosh. So most guides are usually 6 density, right? Because you don't want like another human guiding you, right?
No.
So I know a lot of people say, oh, it's my grandmother. Well, no, she can be a guide, but not your spirit guide.
Right.
So to me, a spirit guide is someone that you wrote into your contract and you sat there with them and you picked them based on their expertise. Because even on the other side, we all specialize in different things.
Right.
Now, the higher the density, the less likely they are to have a name. But what you can say to them is, back in the day when you were 5th density, what were you called? And they will usually give you something. But it seems like the more I'm working with clients, the more I am finding people have collectives. Like they have like a Palladian collective, an Arcturian collective, where it's not just 1 or 2. They've written in like this whole group to be with them.
Right.
And I think 20 years ago, I really, first of all, I mean, back when I was a college kid, I wasn't seeing that really much at all. But now I'm starting to see like, okay, people just, not just do they have a guide, a spirit guide, but they have like a whole collective. They have a whole team. And some people have really close connections with the angels. And so on top of that, they will get, archangels, or some of the angels that we don't even know their names, like, ones that were never written about. And those will be some of their guides. But everybody has, I've never seen anyone have less than 3 guides, but I have seen people have an infinite amount of guides.
Yes. I was going to tell Helene, I went in and I asked Addie, who happens to be my guide, and your guide's name, the one that is there and you can't feel, her name is Alice. It's A, but it's not spelled like Alice like we spell it. It's Alyss. And she's a very old spirit, and she doesn't feel like she needs to impose on you because you already have such a certain level of wisdom. So I hope that helps, Helene.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm tuning into her. If you're wondering like where she came from and how she's going to communicate with you, she is Arcturian, so she is from Arcturus. And so the way she's going to want to communicate with you is through numbers. So you may get the angel numbers like 111, 222. And you also may get sacred geometry, particularly in your dreams. Like you're seeing tetrahedrons and Macarbas and Metatron cubes and things that don't even make sense, but they're encoded with information. And that's when you go into meditation and you say, okay, Alice, what the heck is that even supposed to mean? I don't know. So that, I am picking up on her. But, Helene has a very strong Arcturian energy.
Okay.
Very practical.
Yeah, and I can tell you a little bit about guides. My guide, my first, Addie, who's my main guide, I didn't know who she was till I was 69. And then once I met her, then the whole story came out. And she had been highborn, but she chose to come in a human body during the time of when they were bringing slaves from Africa. And she was brought over as a slave. And when I met her, she was in her slave dress. And we talked about it. And I said, why did you do this? And she said, because my people needed me to help. I had the strength to help them make it through this change. My second guide's name is Frank, and he came from Albania at one point. He came in a human form from Albania to help people who were coming over in the large migrations from Europe. And he lived in 5 Points in New York. And at one point when I was in New York City, I went for a walk and I ended up in this weird neighborhood, and it's like I knew where everything was. And this guy, I was talking to him and he said, oh honey, you wouldn't have had anything to do with this part of the world. This is 5 Points. And then I found out from Frank, I just wanted to go and see home. So he tooled me in there and never told me what he was doing.
Right. And I think that makes sense. Like my main guide, when I was younger, showed himself to be a Buddhist monk. Now, I know nobody has a human guide, but it wasn't until I was ready to find out that, because I'm not even Arcturian, but my guide is. But if my guide had come when I was like 5 years old, looking blue with big dark eyes and spindly arms and legs, that would have probably freaked me out a little. So he had an incarnation that he loved, as a Buddhist monk. And he just showed himself as an ordinary looking Buddhist monk. I never say his name. I'll just call him M because I don't want people channeling him. I have a lot of channelers that watch me. And, you know, he's never far away. You know, no matter what is going on. I think people feel like sometimes their guides are so far away and they're so hard to contact. And it's like, what you don't understand is they're right with you, waiting. But it's a free will planet. The planet is free will. That's the whole point of third density. They can't just intervene and interfere. You have to invite them.
Right.
If you want healing, if you want help, ask them.
Right.
Give them that permission. And I think people forget that. Same thing with the angels. You know, invite them, give them permission. Don't just take for granted that they're going to start doing things to your life, because that's not really how it works. I mean, you're here to make decisions between the positive or negative. Either I'm going to help others or I'm just going to be selfish. And that's like the whole point to our existence at this moment. And I think, you know, chances are if you're watching this, you're already heading in the right direction, in my opinion. You're trying to learn more and do better.
Well, you know, somebody just said, I don't know how to hear my guides. I don't hear like a voice necessarily. There's been a couple of times where that's happened. But normally I just know. It's the same way as when I lay down cards and I know what their meaning is. You just know. And you just have to start to develop that confidence and go forward and look for synchronicities, because they're not going to come and just talk to you and say, by the way, you have this. They're going to keep showing you something and say, need to look at this, need to look at this, need to pay attention to this.
Agreed. I mean, that's why I teach a whole class in it. So like if you're a member, you have access to that whole entire class. Like it's called Meet Your Spirit Guide. Where you I take you step by step, because what I was finding is in this community, the New Age community, a lot of times, what's the advice that we're given? Open your heart to the spirit guides and open your heart to the angels. It's like, what does that even mean? Like, how do you get messages that way? But sometimes using tools. So like, you know, you say, okay, spirit guide, I got my tarot cards, or I got my oracle deck, or I have, you know, my pendulum here. I got a tool. I got a physical thing. I'm going to ask a question. Give me an answer. And you start with the physical thing first, because sometimes people need to touch something because they're so used to the physical. And then once you get good at that, that's when you can start automatic writing. And then once you get good at that, then you go to the channeling.
Right. Well,
you know, it's a progression. Like, don't expect to be a channeler overnight. Like, I'm not joking. So I have this amazing channeling class. It's really, I think it's the best class I've ever taught. And literally somebody said to me, I took your first class and I took your last class and it didn't work. I didn't take the classes in between. And I'm like, what? Everybody wants, like, you know, to have these experiences, but they're not willing. I mean, I literally meditated for 3 hours this morning. Like, if you want to reach that level where you're getting sentences and paragraphs and you're not sitting there having to use a tool like a pen and paper or whatever, cards, that takes practice. But it's worth it. In my opinion, it's worth it. But if it's not worth it to you, then that's okay too, because we're all on a different journey.
Well, I think, you know, the tools are tools, and to me, because I was born before 1950 is supposedly the year that people that started coming in, the planet all start coming in with special the skills. I was born in 49. I'm a 49er. I have several 49ers in my crew that follow me. And what I learned is that I need the tools. And I did take a class in intuitive skills where I didn't have the tools with me. And yeah, it was all right there. But you know what I went back to? My tools. You know, because it's what it's what I feel safe working with. And mostly because early on in mine, I ran into a very negative situation. And that will, you know, if it doesn't turn you off forever, it makes you very cautious the rest of the way out.
Sure.
And, you know, that's when I tell people, you know, just to say, I'm just going to open myself up to the universe. no, there really are things out there that are not, you don't
It's
want.
like, no.
You know,
I've had clients tell me that, and I'm like, no. You open yourself up to your spirit guide, to the angels, to Creator, to an ascended master, not to whatever is traipsing through your neighborhood.
right.
Because they end up with like these earthbound entities or those low-lying demons that are just trying to feed off of you. And they don't know why, like, have it. No, like, don't, like, please, like I always tell people, please don't just open yourself up randomly. Open yourself up with intention.
And you need to open yourself up. I mean, you need to get confident enough in your own meditative skills and your own ability to think it through. Okay.
Absolutely. And like I tell people, you know, if you're wondering what your spirit guide feels like, because people oftentimes are like, well, I don't know when my guide's around. I don't know. First of all, they're always there. But go into meditation and say, okay, spirit guide, come to me. See what you feel. Did you get a feeling of warmth, of love, a little tingling in your third eye chakra? Did you feel a brush on your arm? Did everything get really quiet? Your guide will always send the same signals.
Right.
Just like the angels will. Archangel Gabriel always comes up to my back. Always. Michael always comes up to my right side. Always. And so I know who is coming up to me where, because I know what they all feel like, but you do have to be consistent. And I highly recommend keeping a journal.
Right.
I've been doing journaling for over 20 years, and when I look back, you know, sometimes I was writing down things that made no sense. And now when I look back, I'm like, wait, that's why this happened, or I got this tarot card, or, you know, I'm a big fan of journaling, because then you have a track record.
Right.
You know, and that's my suggestion.
Carl Jung kept a book when he was starting to meditate on things, and you know, he's a famous psychologist that came up with archetypes. I actually have a book called Jung and the Tarot, and finally I understood what he was saying about stuff. That book's like 40 years old. But he saw World War I. And it so terrified him, and he never talked about these books were not published till after he died. Because he said, I don't believe that I should be able to do prophecy. That does not make sense in my world. And of course he was in the old order world, but he was very prophetic. One question I've heard is from Elaine. She said, I've heard that taking antidepressants can interfere with the connection to your spirit guides. Is that true? Not if you need them.
No. No. I would say just the opposite. If you are chemically imbalanced, you're going to have more of a challenge. You know, and first of all, like I always tell people, why would you ever take medical advice from a YouTuber? Why? Here's the thing. I have never listed my degrees. People know that I'm a dementia practitioner, but I've never listed my degrees, and nor will I ever. You know why? Because you don't take medical advice from a YouTuber. But if I have to take medication, I take medication, because sometimes you have to. And if you are chemically imbalanced, then you need to balance it out before you do anything. You know, don't give your power away. Don't put your power into someone else that doesn't even know you, because let's say I am a doctor. I'm not your doctor, and I don't have your medical records.
Yeah, and if I've had doctors who had all my medical records, and I looked at them, and in my heart I knew what they were telling was absolute bullshit, and I wasn't going to take it. And I mean, I was fortunate enough by synchronicity to be taken to a doctor who does nothing but keto, and she also, her roommate in physician assistant school ended up being part of a major research team that studies psychics. So whenever anything would come up for me, she could call her and say, what do you think about this? And she's just retired and passed me on to another doctor who has similar skills. But trust me, man, I was raised by a doctor. I know that they're not God, no matter what they think.
Right.
And I saw enough, I was close up and personal as a child with grown-ups that were doctors to understand there can be weird. And and so you just have to go with your gut. But the other thing I will tell you is years ago when I was young and not terribly naive, but between marriages, I had a New Year's party, and I was dating 3 different guys, and one knew that I like scotch, one knew that I like sake, and the other one sent champagne because it was New Year's. So we started cooking and getting New Year's together about noon, and we started hitting the bottles. Well, anyway, I read cards that whole night. I remember seeing Auld Lang Syne. I don't remember anything I said when I was reading cards. I was just not there. Well, my mentor at the time was an astrologer, and she just lost it when she found out I was drinking and reading cards. She said, "You can't do that." And she said, "You don't know who's coming through you, especially if you're that out of it." But I will tell you, I don't know who was coming through me that night, but they were really good because I had people chasing me for years that were at that party saying, "Everything you told me that night happened." Do not do this. Do not drink and card.
I always say, do not drink and divine.
That's true. That's a great way to put it.
You don't know, and it's not worth it. And if you're naturally psychic, you could end up opening up this portal, because people like us, we open portals all the time sometimes by accident, and you start adding a chemical to it, and then you start opening these weird portals.
And especially because, when, at the point I was at in my life, I was in so much grief and pain. Why would anyone come and ask me how to do anything? I was, everything's being stripped away that I had been believed that I should work towards, even though I was set. Everybody goes through those periods in their life, I think, and if they don't, I don't trust them.
Right. Destiny of the soul.
But what we're looking for, I would advise you to look at Dianne's channel if you are interested in maybe learning. Obviously, the woman has incredible vocabulary and learning all this stuff. And I wanted her because I know she talks with people that are looking at Gaia differently than those of us who are clinging onto the planet, holding onto rocks, going, "What?"
Yeah, I've never clinged onto this planet, but this is, honestly, it's never felt like home, and it's so funny because when you made me that crystal grid, what card came up?
Earth. But
it worked, so.
Well, you needed a little more earth in your, just like other people need, I did a grid for someone, and they were in the middle of really troubling with a lot of different issues, and they just needed discernment. They needed to trust their own discernment to know how to make the decisions. Everybody who gets a grid from me, and I know there's 2 ladies sitting out there saying, "You haven't been my grid yet." I had to get strong enough after COVID, guys. You have no idea what it takes out of me to build those. But, and I'm going to start on them tomorrow when I finish the 9 candles. Wait a minute.
You'll get there. It's just going to take a little bit of time, because that's how I was too. And for me, it was to get the fever to break.
Mm-hmm.
It took a month. And you can function with a fever, but you're not quite yourself.
Well, I don't want to screw with someone's energy set that I'm setting them if my energy's not in the right place. But I've been feeling so good the last few days. It's been kind of really good. But I want to make sure I'm really, 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 really well and ready to go.
I agree.
I've got someone talking about, do you work with people who have attachments, or do you send them to someone else? Because I don't do everything. I don't do attachments. I just send them to someone else.
I see what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I can get rid of them. It really depends upon. In my whole career, in 20 some odd years, I have only actually had one person with a true demonic attachment, with a higher level demon, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked him, he was a young kid, right? He was I don't know, late teens, early 20s. And I'm like, how did you get this high level demon? Because the demon's telling me who it is. And I'm like, okay, so you got Belial stuck to you.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get Belial stuck to you? I don't know. And I'm like, stop it. This is one from the Bible. What did you do?
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, well, I did a ritual, because Belial's very good at influencing people, and he wanted a girl. And I'm like, okay. But I said, what did you say that he jumped into like your body and now you're kind of like possessed and he's attached to you? And he goes, well, I don't know. And I said, read to me the ritual. And what did he say in the ritual? Come into my temple, come into my temple.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing how in the Bible, the temple is your body. He thought, oh, just my parents' basement. And so I said, so now you invited him in. He came in, he did what you asked, and now you're complaining.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like...
You let him live there rent-free, kid.
Like, you invited him in, you actually managed to get the ritual right, which is crazy, but you did. Because most of these rituals have nothing to do, I mean, I can tell he's a vegan. They have nothing to do with blood or hurting anything. They really don't. They're actually pretty simple to do. And that's the problem. The amount of people nowadays doing, especially money rituals, and half of the money rituals, I'm not going to say the names of the demons, but, and there's a couple of nasty angels, because not all angels are good. People don't like to think like that, but some of them, you know, you got your angels of wrath. And so they're doing like these rituals, you know, from YouTube and from books on Kindle, and they're oftentimes working. And so they're getting the money, but you know what? Well, it was the girlfriend that was spending all the money, so now the girlfriend's gone. And so, yeah, they got money, but now the girlfriend's gone. And like, they're not thinking it through, because like most of the demons aren't going to think it through for you. But I can sometimes help. It all depends upon what in the heck you did to get the attachment.
Well, sometimes I had a friend who had an attachment removed, and he had been molested as a child by a priest.
Oh.
And it was an alien presence that was put in him, and he lived with it for 60 years till we figured it out, and somebody got it off of him. I think they're very real. I think if you have something that's real like that, if you want to email me privately, I'm not going to announce who handles that kind of stuff that I know, because they may, I always check with them. Do you want this one? I've got this one. You want this? I don't get much stuff like that. Right now, I'm being very fortunate in getting a lot of very benign people who want to just save the earth and survive this year and want to. Do in your channeling and in what you're seeing, do you feel it getting lighter and lighter here? I mean, do you feel like we're out of the tunnel? Yeah. Okay. I do too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think things are getting much better, and and I feel like there's such an interest of people to try to work with the higher entities. You know, whereas, you know, I know, like, say, especially like say in the 80s, like, you know, like when I was a kid, like they were looking more at working with the darker entities and going that way. But then once, you know, I think people started to become a bit lighter, they started realizing, oh, I think it's the same results with, you know, spirit guides and angels. And so I think that is something that also helped with the shift too, is that in people's private practices, they were deciding to work with higher entities.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Of course, when you were in your youth, I was a full-grown adult reading at psychic fairs, and I can tell you the quality and kinds of questions changed.
Yeah.
And you could feel I could feel some of the shift coming. I used to read tarot to raise money at my kids' school at their Halloween party, okay? And when I first went, it was always the girls, will little Bobby love me? And and the guys were always like, you know, what career am I going to have? By the 6th year I was reading at their schools, it had completely changed. The girls were like, what career am I going to have? And the boys were like, will a girl ever like me? I mean, it was a complete switch, which is kind of interesting.
And I think what I get a lot more of is, why am I here? What is my life purpose? What is my life mission? Where did I come from? Where was I before this? Where am I going back to? Who are my guides? I'm getting like very highly spiritual questions, and less when am I getting married? Am I going to Florida next year? Like I'm not getting I get some, but even those questions are mixed in with the higher spiritual questions. Right.
Well, I'd read in time frames, 3 months or a year.
Yeah.
Or, you know, or on a specific situation. And then I do, well, you've seen me do past life readings, which, for people to try and the only reason I'm always hesitant doing past life readings because some people think, oh, well, that solves everything. Well, it's one of your past lives. I mean, some of us have had hundreds, and, to pick on the one and make it,
Right.
and maybe the universe did reveal it to you for that. But I'm always hesitant in giving people information I think they're going to run off and use in the wrong. But it's their choice. It's their information. They bought it. Go with it, But
True.
this year's been interesting. I have been doing 12-month readings for about 5 years. So you can imagine that at the beginning of 2020, when I worked this New Year's party, how everything stopped for everybody in March and I couldn't figure it out.
Yes.
And I knew, I kept saying,
Right.
and I kept saying,
Right.
everybody, I'd come home and I'd tell my kids, everybody's shifting. What the hell's going on?
Everybody, yes, and including myself. And I was, because I always read on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Every couple of days I read on myself. And it was like and I always kind of go out just sort of like you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially December, January, you start to read further out
Mm-hmm.
into the year. And even for myself, like in clients, and I'm like, wait a minute, something's happening to the collective. Because I thought it was just me at 1st
Mm-hmm.
And then I started like, okay, no. There's no such thing as coincidences.
Mm-hmm.
So, I totally agree with all of that.
Yeah, within 2 weeks of a party I read at, which was all full of people who normally never get readings, I was just sort of the fun little thing in the corner that the wife bought for her husband's 40th birthday. And they were all 40 years old. They were all very, very successful at whatever career they'd gone into. They all went to a very exclusive private school here in Dallas, for the most part. And they had, we were at a country club, a very nice one in Dallas, and I read the guy whose birthday it was, and I looked at him and I said, does your wife know you've sold all your businesses, or you're selling them, or you're divesting? And he goes, no, but I just feel like it's the right time. He was actually, his birthday was January 12th that year. He had those planets on his birthday. And so he and I talked about it, and I kept saying, everything, I just looked at him, I said, everything's going to stop soon. And I'd never said that really before, but I'd seen it. And he looked at me and he goes, what do you mean? And he goes, like, is it war? Or is it? I said, no, it's not a war. I can't figure it out, kid. And I'm old. It's something I've never seen before. And I said, it's not war, because I have a feeling about war. I've been through enough of them.
Yeah.
But in the end, I just said, everything's going to stop. Well, he sent me a text one day saying, you were right, it all stopped. He said, but I was out before it did. So he had already divested himself and was kind of off in this other world. I said, does your wife know you're doing this? Because that was what, and she didn't, because trust me, there's no way she wanted him to give up the cushy investment banker crap. But, I'm sure now they're both homeschooling their children, they were telling me about. Oh, yeah, Marie V. I've done several people that are on here. By the way, to remind you, if you want a year reading for 2022, you have to get a hold of me by the end of the month, which is soon.
Oh, yes. Yeah, almost at the end, aren't we?
We almost are. Half this month flew by because I was lying in bed saying, am I dead yet? Really, ugly.
I feel you.
Anyway, does anybody have another question on the board? I've been watching and I haven't seen. Somebody wrote, she lives in South Florida, so if we see bad weather coming, let her know, because she never watches the news. And Vivian C. is here, who's the one you told she was a Hydian? Yeah, she's one of my, she and I just talk. Now she's kind of
She is wonderful. Hello.
Yes, sitting in Puerto Rico. She's the one who needs watching.
Yes. She's highly spiritual.
Yeah, and she's
probably one of my most spiritual clients that I have.
She's one of the most spiritual ones I have. She's if you've taken my gardening course, and by the way, if you've bought a garden recently, I'm about to send out a letter to you that I'm going to teach, give a one-on-one 1-hour course to people, because some of them get the garden and they get a little confused, can't imagine why. But Vivian's the one that she got the garden, and without a class, she figured it out. And I actually have a page that says, Vivian says. And if Vivian says it, it's you too, because Vivian really connects to that. And I think something's... Anyway, somebody commented, I won't comment on readers that people think that they're high or drinking when they're on the YouTube, but it's not a way to do it. I'd hang up. This woman says she doesn't watch. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, there is, I've seen a few. There's actually one I won't collaborate with for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're responsible for those you bring around you, but, sometimes I wonder if, I kind of look at them and go, are they drunk or are they just so into whatever it is they're doing? But I saw one smoking a joint on, and that's when I turned it off.
Yeah, see, and I saw one with the beer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not a good practice. It's, protect yourself.
Yeah.
And unless somebody comes up with some incredibly intense, wonderful questions, you've kind of answered what I wanted to know. People can go to your channel and get information that will help them. And this time of change is very real, people. As soon as the weather clears enough for me to walk around and look, I got some dowsing rods, and I've been practicing using the pendulum to check my frequency. And the reason I want to teach people how to do that is, it's one thing for us to say we're raising our frequency. Sometimes we have the wherewithal inside to see it. But I know for myself, I've woken up and looked at my frequency and thought I was really doing great. And I was just fooling myself. That old ego was just plowing right in there. So,
sure.
And people say, raise my frequency, how? I don't know if you have things you do in your things where you talk about doing that. But, there's...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to teach people. There's a lot of stuff we just can't leave them hanging saying, oh, go out and do this blindly.
Right, no. I mean, I think, to me, the best way to raise your frequency is you open your heart chakra, you open your third eye chakra, you create heart-brain coherence, and, you go from there with your meditation. You picture what it is that you are trying to manifest. And that's, you pull it in, and it does raise your frequency. It's something that Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches.
Yes. Yeah, go to Joe Dispenza. He's great.
Because, the Ra was telling me forever before he ever came out with it, but he's the one that actually published it. But I'm going to say he is 100% on, because what he says is what the Ra has been saying for such a long time. And
right.
That's how you get the self-healing. That's how you manifest and create. And but it is through, in my opinion, it is through a daily practice.
And Joe Dispenza's good. There's several other people that do meditations, but if you can find a group, even if it's on the phone or someone to talk to share what you're seeing, that's really helpful. To have a group where you can share what's going on around you, so that is it real or is it Memorex? Which way are we going with this stuff?
True.
And somebody else asked about her guides. Sandy Miller, if you look in below and email me, I will be glad to help you figure that out. People are thanking us.
Oh, thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
And Sharon Sipe has once again been the world's best dragon slayer on the chat. Want to give her that. If you guys wouldn't mind liking and then sharing this with other people so that we can get the word out. And we will try to be here for you. And there's all different, one of the things I wanted people to see in these 9 days is that there's all different ways to get to the end of the path. And I think Dianne has a particularly unique perspective because she talks to things that stand away from the planet, look at the planet, and without astronaut suits,
That is true. I mean, the Ross say that they literally surround our planet. And, their spaceships are amazingly big, and they protect us from those negative ETs from coming down.
Mm-hmm.
If you notice, nobody ever talks anymore about being abducted and negative things happening, and those stories have sort of all gone away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we've moved past all that. And so, we're in a different age, and, I've always trusted what I get from the rock. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Well, thank you everybody for coming by today.
Yes, thank you.
I will be live tomorrow with Sheila, Celtic Tarot. She and I are going to be talking about how to live in this world and be in this world, and these entities, the things that are happening around us, and how to adjust to them. And thank you all for coming, and I look